welcome back to No Overtime. Today, we will be recapping the exciting first round of the NBA playoffs and looking ahead to the second round.
Let's first go over the sweeps. The Cavs beat the Heat 4-0, and the Thunder beat the Grizzlies 4-0. So, Jake, what did you see from the Cavs versus Heat series?
Yeah, so in that series, the Cavs just completely dismantled the Heat. I'm pretty sure they won by, when it came to combined points, either the second most in NBA history. So they played one of the best series ever. They swept them. Not even one game was close. And I think it just shows, how well they're going to play the rest of the playoffs. They had, I think, either the first or second best record this year in the regular season. So the Heat, they were in a strong team, but I think the Cavs are just really strong right now.
We knew the Cavs were going to win that series.
Mm-hmm.
The only X factor was, if Bam Adebayo would have a crazy game and, keep them in one and then maybe pull one out. But he never really was a factor in that series.
Yeah, and after trading Jimmy Butler, obviously,
they had no
their
chance.
Playoff experience and just their overall team just got much worse.
Yeah, and then over in the West, the Thunder beat the Grizzlies in a sweep. What did you see in that series?
Yeah, I was a little surprised by the sweep. I expected the Grizzlies to maybe take a game. They're a very strong team with Bane, Morant, and Jaren Jackson Jr. But, the Thunder are a really young and surprising team, but they're looking like one of the best teams in the league, if not the best.
And it was interesting because the Grizzlies just signed Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. to extensions, and they played actually poorly, very bad in that series. And I think it's going to be interesting to see because, they signed them, 5-6 year deals. And, if they're not playoff performers, then you're not going to want to keep them around.
Yeah, and there's also a chance they could trade Ja Morant. That's not out of the picture right now. So
yeah. All right, next let's go to the 5-game series. So the Pacers beat the Bucks in 5. So what did you see from that series?
Yeah, so Dame obviously was hurt for the first couple of games, and I'm pretty sure the first game he came back or the second game he tore his Achilles. So that was just a huge loss for them. Giannis played really well, but I just don't think it was enough for them to take down the Pacers, who, they're a pretty surprising team. I didn't expect them to be this good. And at this point, with the Bucks losing in the first round for the third year in a row, I think there's a really good chance Giannis asks out in the offseason, and we don't see him in Milwaukee. What do you think about that?
I agree because it's now 4 years ago since they won that championship in 2021, the Bucks. And, we thought Giannis would at least have one more by now because he was so young, and he's really only gotten better since then. And, it's surprising because his supporting cast, I think it's just bad moves by their front office. Chris Middleton trading him away, I feel like that was not the right move. I don't feel like they have much depth anymore. I feel like Dame's career is pretty much coming to a close. They got a lot to figure out, and if they want to keep Giannis, then they better figure it out soon.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then the Celtics took down the Magic in 5. So what did you see from that one?
Yeah, this series, I think we all knew the defending champs were going to take down the Magic. The Magic, they had a very good season. A lot of people weren't expecting them to make the playoffs. They kind of dealt with injuries with Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero, but, I think this was a pretty expected outcome.
Yeah, the only thing that you could talk about, because we also knew the Celtics were going to just take that series easily, but the Magic did make some close games. There were some games where they were in it. I think 3 out of the 4 Celtic wins, they were pretty much close games up until the end. And it just kind of shows that the Celtics are vulnerable because nights they don't shoot well because they're a primarily shooting team.
Yeah.
Nights they don't shoot well, they look beatable and they look like they can be handled. And then also back to the West, the Timberwolves upset the Lakers in 5. So what did you see?
Yeah, this was really surprising, but obviously the Lakers didn't really have a big man. Rudy Gobert, 27 and 24 rebounds?
Yeah, that was
something
crazy.
Absurd. And, giving up 24 rebounds and 27 points to Rudy Gobert, that's just really bad. I know he's a great rebounder, but they just had no defense at all. Anthony Edwards went off. Some of their role players, not even a role player, Naz Reid, he's a great shooter, Jaden McDaniels. Yeah. So I was definitely surprised, but I think the Timberwolves are really scary.
I don't think a lot of people saw the Timberwolves winning this series, but I think I saw them winning it because the Lakers don't really have that big man that can really compete with Gobert. So Gobert, even though he really didn't have that many great games. He really was the deciding factor to close out the series.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I mean, the Lakers defense we always knew was a problem. We know Luka's a cone on defense. We know that's why, he's one of the worst defenders in the league. If I say that, he's too slow. And that just allowed easy opportunities for the Timberwolves, and they capitalized on those. So it just shows that they can make some noise.
And
they
I think
make
it's
a playoff
fair
run.
to say this kind of helps the Mavs GM Nico Harrison just a little bit because Luka obviously is a great offensive player, but it shows like if they had Anthony Davis instead of Luka, I think there's a much better chance they would have won that series.
Yeah.
So, obviously Anthony Davis is older, but like you could kind of see where he was coming from just a little bit, even though it was a crazy trade. But Luka's defense, it's a problem.
It's definitely
for
a problem. All right, next, the 6-game series. So only one surprisingly went to 6 games, and that was the Knicks beating the Pistons. So what did you see?
Yeah, so I was very happy. My New York Knicks won in 6. We kind of got lucky with one of those missed foul call at the end from Josh Hart.
Yeah.
But, my problem with the Knicks is that every single game is close. I just think that if we want to be a contender, like, we shouldn't have beaten the Pistons in 6 close games. Obviously, I'm happy we made it out the first round. The Pistons are a good team, but it was a little scary as a Knicks fan, I would say.
I think my biggest takeaway is that I don't personally think this, but there is a consensus that, like, the Knicks are kind of like a soft team. But I feel like
that's fair.
that proved the doubters wrong because the Pistons they're a physical team.
They are.
And it just proved that, like, the Knicks can be physical back and they can fight through physicality and that they can get to the free throw line.
I just think my problem with how the Knicks played, obviously Brunson had that insane game winner in Game 6 in Detroit. But I think, like, especially versus the Celtics, I don't want to jump to the second round, they're just going to know how to guard him. They have Derek White and Drew Holiday. They're both going to be able to guard him on the perimeter. We got Mikal Bridges and Karl-Anthony Towns for a reason. So we have shooters. We have OG Anunoby. I wouldn't even mind seeing Mikal Bridges come off the bench in this series. I don't think that's crazy. But Jalen Brunson can't be shooting the ball every single time, or they're going to double team.
Yeah. All right, and then we had 2 Game 7 series. So the Warriors ended up beating the Rockets last night in 7. So what did you see from that series?
Yeah, that was a really, really fun series. A lot of some low-scoring games, especially last night's game. Warriors were up 3-1. Rockets came back to win 2, but we knew Curry wouldn't lose another 3-1 series. Buddy Hield went off. Curry, I would say overall had a pretty good series.
Yeah.
And I think the Brandon Podziemski, he stepped up.
He did.
I wasn't expecting that out of him. He looks really good right now.
Yeah.
So what did you think? I know the Warriors are your team.
Yeah. So I think my biggest takeaway from the series is how, like, underrated the Warriors are defensively. I don't think, a lot of people view them as that team, especially because they're kind of missing that centerpiece.
Right.
But Draymond still, and I'm not going to say locked up Sengun because Sengun still had a good series, but he made some he was a pretty good rim protector. He was stealing, he was stripping the ball, he was getting backboard blocks. I mean, he was just being Draymond. And then, I mean, the Rockets played great defense on Steph, even though I feel like it was kind of a little fouling a little bit at times.
Got a little chippy between Fred VanVleet, Curry, and all those guys.
They play great defense on Steph. I will not deny that, but
that's fair.
I feel like there was some fouling going on. But I mean, the Rockets, they gave it their all. The Warriors championship, pedigree came through. And then the second Game 7 was also in the West. The Nuggets beat the Clippers.
Yeah, so it was kind of exciting. Obviously I think the highlight was the Aaron Gordon alley-oop game winner.
Yeah.
I honestly thought that was kind of goaltending, or I didn't think it was meant to be a pass, but you could beg to differ. Yeah. But it was a pretty good series. Nuggets won, and there's really not much to say about it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, Jokic, see, this is where things get, tricky for the Nuggets because Jokic and Murray both had bad games in Game 7, like starting off the game, and I feel like that's something you can't really do against the Thunder. And especially because they're lucky that their supporting cast stepped up, like Christian Brown and Michael Porter Jr.
Christian Brown had a Good
LeBron,
series.
yeah.
Westbrook. You gotta
Well, yeah,
mention
Westbrook. He had a good game 7. So, I mean, that's just something you can't do
Mhm.
against the Thunder.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, now let's move on to the second round of the NBA playoffs and our predictions. So first up, we'll start with your Golden State Warriors taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. So what do you think is going to happen in the series?
So, I'm pretty nervous about this series because, I mean, the Warriors are kind of like the Lakers in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really have that centerpiece to compete with Gobert. That's where I feel like he's going to get a lot of opportunities. I mean, I feel like Draymond could compete with him a little bit, but at the end of the day, Gobert's a 7-footer and Draymond's only 6'6".
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got to still just support my team and just,
that's fair.
hope they can pull one out. But I think
Mhm.
they could do it in 7. Just hopefully Curry has some crazy games
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
pull some out. And hopefully their just championship DNA can just power them. I mean, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. It goes to 7 games. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
take the Wolves. Just let's look at it
No.
on paper here.
I agree with
We have,
Yeah.
I mean, we got Jalen McDaniels. He could lock up. I think he's got the chance to lock up either Butler or Curry. Anthony Edwards is gonna be Anthony Edwards. I don't know. I mean, unless Butler's on him, I don't know who's gonna be able to guard him.
Yeah.
Then they have Randall and Rudy Gobert. That's gonna be a problem for Draymond, I think. Not
too
to
worried
mention
about
you have
Randall.
DiVincenzo
Yeah.
coming off the bench for shooting, Naz Reid, maybe Rob Dillingham here and
Yeah.
there. I mean, it's just I think we've overlooked how good the
Yeah,
Timberwolves
they
are.
are.
Their roster it's insane how good their roster is. But I think either team has a chance here. But I'm gonna take the Wolves in a really entertaining 7-game series.
All right, and then in the East, you have the Cavs versus the Pacers. So I personally believe the Pacers will pull this out in 7. I
Mhm.
mean, they have looked surprisingly good. I think better than most people thought. I don't know what kind of like dark magic they're
Yeah.
doing in the locker room, but as of right now, they're up 1-0 in the series. They beat the
Mhm.
Cavs last night. So what do you see?
Yeah, they beat the Cavs last night. Personally, I think both teams are actually somewhat weak. Like, I think
Yeah.
they're both exciting young
Yeah.
teams, but I think if they were playing, like, obviously they're not in the West, I think I would take the Warriors and the Timberwolves over both of these teams. But, they're playing each other, so I have to pick one. I think it's going to go to 7, and even though the Pacers won last night, I think the Cavs are going to win. Their roster is just stacked, but it's two very good offenses going up against each other. I think it's an okay series, nothing too special, but I think it's going to end up going to 7 games.
Yeah, and then also in the West, the Nuggets versus the Thunder. So that is 2 MVP candidates, pretty much the top 2 candidates going
Mhm.
head to head. I think the Thunder in 6, just from like the perspective that I do think Shea is the MVP.
Mm-hmm.
I do think he's the best player in the league, even if he has a foul baiter. He is the best player in the league. And I feel like the Thunders have more depth than the Nuggets. Even though the Nuggets have pretty good depth, I just feel like the Thunder have better depth, and they're just
Mhm.
more efficient.
Yeah, I'm also going to take the Thunder in 6. I have Jokic as my MVP. I don't think he's going to win, though. I think there's a chance the Thunder win in 5. As good as the Nuggets are, I don't think they, especially without, they have a new head coach. They fired their head coach right before the playoffs. So I think, the chemistry of the Thunder, they're going to win in 5 or 6.
All right, this is where things get a little controversial. So the Knicks versus the Celtics. I mean, I could see this series going 2 ways. I think I could see the Knicks winning in 6, or I could see the Celtics in 6. But I think just the Celtics, the championship last year, they're going to have they've been in this situation before. They're not nervous. I feel like the Celtics could pull it out in 6.
Yeah, I think wherever it goes, I think a lot's gonna come down to home court advantage. But regardless, I'm gonna have to stick with my Knicks.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any chance they can win in 6. So I actually somehow think they're gonna pull it off in Boston in Game 7.
Well, I mean, I said this before, but the Celtics are like a shooting team and a
Mhm.
primarily shooting team. The days they're good, they're really good, and the days
Mhm.
they're bad, they're really bad. So I feel like there's going to
the
be
Knicks' perimeter defense.
Their
Is
perimeter-
it's not great to be honest,
yeah.
but I think if the Knicks really toughen up, they have a chance. But
Yeah.
it's a long shot.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of No Overtime. We'll see you guys next time.